Okay, I think I am ready to get started. So today, well, yesterday was launch day for the Butternut Slub Hat. I did the cowl last month, and then of course I had about half a skein of leftover yarn in both colors, and I was like, well, I've, I have all this yarn left over. What am I going to do with it? I'm going to make a hat, of course. And so that's what I did. And so this is the Butternut Slub Hat, and it uses the same techniques and the same yarn as the Butternut Slub Cowl. We just translated it into a hat. And so this is marled, right? So I have two strands of yarn. Where'd they go? They're both from Kim Dye's Yarn. She is a dyer in Virginia. I met her when I was teaching at Yarn Matters in Williamsburg during, I think it was during the James River yarn crawl. Is that what it was? I think so. Yeah, so I got a chance to meet her at one of her trunk shows, and she's super nice. So if you ever have a chance to meet her, I definitely recommend that you pop in and say hi. And then I love her yarn. She's got so many great options, and she does really pretty colorways. So yeah, definitely check out Kim Dye's Yarn. So what I used for these two designs is I used her close to home base, which there's a really neat story behind it. I recommend you check out her website and read that. But it is a Cormo wool and Tussa silk blend. So it has this really rich, almost rustic texture with that wool, but the silk adds some softness and drape to it. And so it turns out like really like soft to, or next to skin, soft and nice. I really liked it. And then the other one is Crumble Slubby, and I use the colorway Dahlia, which is what these little nups are. This is the Crumble Slubby. And so it's kind of like a rickrack yarn, and then it's got these slubs. That's what they're called. If you do any hand spinning, you know all about slubs. And it's also a fingering weight yarn. So I use two strands of fingering weight yarn held together, which is called marling. And all that is, you hold two strands of yarn together and you treat them as one. Okay, so you don't do anything different, like as you're crocheting, right? I'm going to do a little finger crocheting for you here. You just treat them as one strand of yarn, okay? You don't have to do anything different. You don't have to make sure they stay aligned or anything like that. You just hold them together and you go. You treat them as one piece of yarn. So that's marling in a nutshell. If you don't like the marled look, you can absolutely substitute this for, well, actually, you could use two strands of yarn held together that are the same color if you want to use up some stash yarn. Say you've got a skein of fingering weight yarn, just take one strand from each end and hold those together, and you won't have the marled look about it. But you can still use that fingering weight yarn. If you don't want to do that, you want to use a single strand, then go for a worsted weight. You could probably use DK or even Aran weight. In fact, Kim has a couple really fun Tweety yarns on clearance right now. I don't know how many colorways she has left. I haven't checked in a couple days, but I think that would be a fun option for this hat as well. And so if you swap out for a worsted weight or so, you can probably get pretty close to gauge without having to make any other changes. Now in the pattern, oh, yes, Trish, marling, learning every day. I love it. Yep, that's all it is. It's just holding two strands of yarn together. So yeah, it's a great way to do some stash busting also. So anyway, sidetrack. I've taught classes all about marling. I get into it. Okay, so let's talk about sizing since we talked about a little bit about yarn substitutions. So this hat is worked from the crown down, which is probably the only way I will ever design hats again. I've done one that was brim up and I did not like it at all. So when you work from the crown down, you work in a circle until you get a flat circle of a certain size. And that's when you stop increasing and you make the sides of the hat. Now, you may have seen in my newsletter last week, I think it was, I talked all about how to use the flat circle diameter formula. So I'm not going to go too much into that, and I'll also link to it in the description in case you missed that. But especially if you are modifying a design or if you're in between sizes. So like this, I used a G hook, which is 4 millimeters for this, and we've got taller stitches. So we use single crochets and double crochets for the bulk of this pattern. And by having 2 rounds and one of them being taller stitches, that means there's a pretty big difference between sizes. So as you make this flat circle bigger, it doesn't give you much opportunity to tweak the sizing. Now, I do have a couple tips in the pattern about doing just that, but another way you can do it is by changing your yarn weight. So if you want it to be a little bit smaller, you could try using a DK weight yarn. If you want it to be a little bit bigger, go up to an Aran weight yarn. Or if you're feeling really frisky, you could try holding 3 strands of yarn together and see what that gets you. The way to make sure that you still get a hat that fits you the way you like is by using that flat circle diameter to estimate the finished circumference of the hat. And I do have a chart inside the pattern that gives you the estimated size of that flat circle diameter. I have 4 sizes. So there's a baby size, there is a small adult / child size. So that's the size that I actually used because I knew that this yarn would block out a little bit bigger. And I have a small head and I like a snug fitting hat. So I did go ahead and use that. And then I just blocked it pretty aggressively and use that. And then the next size is like a medium. So that would probably be the average head size for most adults. And then I also have instructions for an extra large size in case you've got fluffy curls or dreads, or you've just got a lot of hair and you don't want to squish it. Or some of us just have bigger heads than others, right? So the fit range is actually between 13 inches and 28 inches for this hat. And all that is going to depend on your tension, your gauge, the yarn you choose, all those things. But using that flat circle diameter will give you greater control over the finished size of your hat. It does take a little practice. I'm not going to say it's not, a little bit of work. But with practice using that formula, you can get it nailed down. You know exactly how big you want to make that flat circle to get a properly custom fitted hat. So let's go back to stitches for a minute. So I already said we use the single crochet and the double crochet, and we alternate those rounds. We're also going to work into the back loop only of every other round, and that's what gives you this nice circle line here in the hat. Let me bring that in a little bit closer. It doesn't want to focus. That's okay. That's probably good enough to see those circles. There it goes. All right, so the working into the back loop only is what gives you that line. I'm not far enough in. This line right here. That goes around here. All right, so that line right there. And it just adds a little bit of extra texture. Trish, you're not a big hat maker. Well, I'm not a big hat maker either. I tend to make a hat and then wear it to death. But hats are pretty popular, and I've told myself over and over again I need to design more hats because there are so many different ways that you can make a hat with different yarn sizes and everything else. And this one's pretty quick and easy. So yeah, if you're thinking about trying one, this would be a good one to do because it works up pretty quickly. The other stitch I want to tell you about is the alternate slip stitch join that I recommend using, and I've got a tutorial in the pattern. There's a link to a tutorial that will walk you through the whole step or the whole process of making this hat from step 1 to the brim. It's bite size, it's tiny size, like a doll size hat. But I walk you through each step. But I've also filmed a standalone video to share with you, and that's going to go out in my newsletter tomorrow. So make sure you're signed up if you don't want to miss that, because it's a good trick to use in some other patterns as well. And it's just about where you place your hook when you do that join. So that's also something, and that gives you this nice, neat joined edge. So like, can you pick out where my join is looking at this hat right now? I think, no, I can't look at it in the screen. I've got to look at it. See, I can't even find it right now. And I can usually pick it out. All right, right there, there it is. Yep, right here. This is right here. Coming, nope, this way. I forget it's backwards. Right like this. That's where the join is. It's almost invisible. And that's because I use that alternate slip stitch join, which I will show you in the tutorial video in the pattern or in tomorrow's newsletter. So be sure you're signed up for that. Oh, of course, we end with post stitches for the brim. And now if you stick to the pattern, you should have a multiple of 4 at the end of your hat. And so this is a 2x2 ribbing using post stitches. So if you need a closer look at how to do post stitches, I do have standalone tutorial videos for those as well. Front post double crochet and back post double crochet. You can find links to those on my website as well as on my YouTube channel. So those are the stitches that you need. I've already talked about the yarn. We talked a little bit about sizing. Do you have any questions? How about, what's it look like when we wear it? I'm trying to find that seam again. Nope, can't find it. Wait, there it is. Ha! All right, so I made this, I think, 1 repeat longer so that I could wear it with a little bit of slouch, right? But it's also, it's not too long that I can just pull it down, right? If it's a really cold day especially, I can just pull it down a little bit closer. You can also fold the brim up if you want. And if you know that you like to have a long brim, you just keep going. I had to stop at a 1-inch brim because I ran out of yarn. So full disclosure there, this brim probably would have been longer if I had had more yarn. But this is, as it's written, it's about a 1-inch brim, which isn't unusual. But yeah, you can make a longer brim so that you can turn it up if you like to do that. Thank you, Trish. I think it is cute, and I love the texture that it ends up with the slubbies. But like I said earlier, if you don't love the slubby texture, try it. But you want to have a little bit of something, try a tweed. I think this would be really fun in a tweed yarn. And my pattern testers used all kinds of different yarns. We had Woolies Thick and Quick, I think, which is probably an Aran weight. We had some marling. I had one gal used maybe an alpaca in one of her strands, and so that was super pretty. It was all fluffy. It looked like a little cloud. We had what was it? Mandala. Is that right? From I can't remember right now. One of the cakes. So it wasn't Karen Cakes. Maybe it was Premier or one of the other yarns that does the little cakes with the long color changes, and it had sparkles in it. So that was fun. So yeah, lots of options, especially if you figure out how to use that flat circle diameter to make sure that you've got a good size for you. So, okay. This is the Butternut Slub Hat. My hair's all crazy now. That's awesome. I don't think I have anything else that I needed to share. So let me double check comments, make sure I don't see any other questions. If you do think of a question later, like you're watching this replay, or next week I'm going to share it on my YouTube channel. So if you're catching it there, drop a comment if you've got a question, and I will do my best to either help you out there or direct you to a resource that can help you instead. So, all right, I think I'm going to let you guys go. This is the Butternut Slub Hat. This is the Butternut Slub Cowl. I'll go crazy and put them both on for you. How about that? Ha! Should have done the cowl before I did the hat. So both patterns are available on Ravelry as well as in my Etsy shop. If you sign up for my newsletter today, you will get tomorrow's newsletter with the alternative slip stitch join tutorial, as well as a discount code that you can use in my Ravelry shop for the not this one, for the hat. Yeah, and so this is the cowl and the hat. I think both of them together are a little bit too much, but I know some people love to be matchy-matchy, and so, you know, why not? All right, I I think that's it. So I will talk to you guys next time. Thanks so much for joining me, and I can't wait to see what you make. Bye.